Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is politics reporter Sara Dorn. Sara, thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for having me, as always.
Of course, it is a big day today. As you know, the State of the Union address. This comes as, it's been a mixed bag for President Biden the past month. He's had a better than expected jobs report, but that's kind of been clouded by a few controversies, the suspected Chinese spy balloon, as well as the document scandal surrounding him. Can you tell us what we can expect for the State of the Union?
So, as you mentioned, Brittany, the January jobs report really bolsters Biden going into his third State of the Union address. Unemployment reached a 54-year low. We learned on Friday. This prompted Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen yesterday to say that to sort of downplay recession fears. So this is very good news for Biden. The labor market added more than 500,000 jobs last month, which defied economists' expectations. So definitely, we're going to be hearing about that tonight. And then, there's one of two ways that he can play this controversy about the suspected Chinese spy balloon. He would be probably amiss not to mention it, because it is weighing so heavily on the minds of Americans. And this is something the GOP really attacked him for over the weekend. We may hear him say that, the U.S. acted with force and shooting down the balloon and also precision. Earlier in the week, they said that they did not want to do that because out of fears that it would cause harm to people and property on the ground. That is the reason that they gave for waiting until the balloon was suspended over the Atlantic Ocean. Speaking of the balloon and in China, one area that really has some bandwidth for bipartisan action in this split Congress, and there are not many issues that do, is China. And, just taking a stronger approach to reining in China's economic dominance, cybersecurity threats to the military. Already, one of the first bipartisan pieces of legislation that Congress passed this year was to establish a House Select Committee to investigate, a range of issues in the U.S.'s response to China. So I definitely think that is going to be featured as a prominent issue in his speech.
Those are some bipartisan issues, which is obviously important, but it also would be wise of President Biden, to play up to his base. He's cratering at a pretty low approval rating right now, which we can get into. But what other issues is he going to hit on?
So police reform is also expected to be a prominent topic. The parents of Tyree Nichols will be in the audience tonight. That is the individual who died after, the video that we saw of him being beaten by Memphis police officers, 5 of whom have now been charged with murder. The Congressional Black Caucus, along with police reform advocates, have strongly urged Biden to make this, a key focus of his speech. And he's likely to renew calls for passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which failed to pass during the previous session of Congress and essentially would make it harder for police to challenge civil misconduct lawsuits against them. It would ban chokeholds, ban no-knock warrants, a range of new protections for civilians who feel that they have been wronged by police. So we will definitely hear a lot about that tonight. And that is obviously something that, plays to his base, not just progressives, but, moderate Democrats as well. More affordable healthcare is that Biden will also advocate for, and it allows him to tout his previous accomplishments as well. Already, there is a $35 insulin price cap for all Medicare recipients. And Biden will urge Congress to expand that to all Americans with an insulin prescription tonight. And he will also encourage lawmakers to pass legislation that would expand Medicaid coverage in the 11 holdout states that have yet to do so.
Obviously, big news in the past year has been the economy. Just this past summer, we hit 40-year high inflation. While prices are coming down, they're still pretty high. So what type of message is he going to say about the economy?
Well, again, he will definitely feature the January jobs report, the addition of more than 500,000 jobs to the labor market in January. But I do want to mention, this really glaring stat that 4 in 10 Americans, according to a Washington Post ABC News poll released yesterday, say that they are worse off financially now than when Biden took office. And that is a larger share of respondents than at any period since the two outlets began asking the question in 1986. So we know that the economy, throughout the midterm election, we talked about this repeatedly. That is the top issue for Americans. He will tout, passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which has been a hallmark of his presidency. And I'm sure that we will hear him call for, bipartisanship in the debt ceiling negotiations and really play up the economic risks that, the federal government faces if Republicans hold to this promise that they've made to demand spending cuts in exchange for the votes to raise the debt limit.
I want to talk about President Biden's popularity here. It has really drastically fallen, and is the economy the reason why? Because he can be touting this, but at the end of the day, people are going to the grocery store and they're really feeling that pinch at the checkout line.
Absolutely. As I just said, 40% of Americans say that they are worse off financially than they were when he took office. That's an abysmal rating compared to previous ratings by, again, the Washington Post and ABC News, who just released a poll yesterday ahead of this address. His approval rating, again, according to those two outlets, now stands at 42%. That is a lower rating after 2 years in office than 12 of the last 13 presidents. The average is about 56%, and only President Trump had a lower approval rating, which was 37% at this point in his tenure.
So I guess that begs the question of how important is the State of the Union address to rally the troops and basically, reignite that support from the Democrats?
Well, this obviously comes as President Biden is expected to announce a 2024 reelection bid. And so, this will be a mix of a campaign speech, though, the White House has contested that narrative and said that this is really going to be, your typical State of the Union policy speech. A lot of Americans, they don't pay close attention to the State of the Union. It's kind of fallen out of popularity in recent years, but I do think that given all of these high-profile issues, the Chinese spy balloon, concerns about the economy, the upcoming 2024 election, the stakes are pretty high at this stage. And not to mention that this is Biden's first address before a split Congress. In the previous 2 years, it was kind of simpatico with Congress and the White House in terms of policymaking. So I think that Americans are really going to be looking to him to set the tone for the next 2 years, as we are going to be facing legislative gridlock and, just a number of investigations from Republicans in Congress amid all of these high stakes issues that still need to be worked out, despite the two sides, being at sort of a stalemate and gridlock.
What do you think that tone is going to be tonight? Because, he could go either one of two ways, either a more unifying message or, touting Democrats only. And House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said calling out, quote, MAGA Republicans would be inappropriate. So what route do we think he's going to take?
I think that bipartisanship will definitely be a theme of this speech. As I said in the beginning of our interview, one legislative priority where there is bipartisan support is being tougher on China. Another is, the U.S.'s support for Ukraine. Both Republicans and Democrats believe that should be ongoing. And just as a side note, this address comes like almost exactly a year after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So it will definitely be a message of unity, and especially given the contentious negotiations going on with the debt ceiling, I think that hammering Republicans would only harm his ability to iron out those negotiations by mid-June when, the Treasury has set the deadline for potentially defaulting on the government's debt.
Before I let you go, I do want to touch on something that you said, and that was this could be technically a presidential announcement for President Biden, a re-election bid, if you will. But only 37% of Democrats want him to make another bid for the White House in 2024, according to a new AP NORC poll. Do you think he will use this State of the Union to change their minds?
I certainly think that he will try. He's been on an infrastructure tour over the last several months, just traveling to different cities where the government has invested significantly in infrastructure projects. But yes, this will be obviously we don't expect him to announce tonight, but this will sort of be a preamble to his presidential run. And campaign season obviously will bring out a bit more of attack mode, especially once the candidate fields are formed. So I think that that's the main difference that we would see in Biden tonight versus Biden on the 2024 stage. He's not necessarily going to be contesting Republicans as much as he is touting his previous accomplishments and, a forward look at the next 2 years and working with this Republican-controlled House and Senate that is controlled by Democrats.
Sara Dorn, thank you so much for coming on, giving your insights for tonight, and I look forward to watching his speech.
Thank you, Brittany.